Gunshots echoed through the restaurant, and time seemed to shatter with the glass. One second, the golden fork was filled with the warm hum of dinner conversations, clinking plates, and soft jazz music. The next second, chaos exploded. "Everybody get down!" a masked man screamed as he stormed inside, waving a gun wildly. A plate crashed to the floor. A woman near the window shrieked. A little boy started crying uncontrollably while his father pulled him under the table. Chairs scraped violently across the floor. People dropped to their knees. Someone knocked over a tray of drinks, and ice scattered everywhere. But in the center of the room, one figure remained standing: Maya Johnson. Her black apron was still neatly tied. Her braids rested calmly over her shoulders. Her dark eyes scanned the room, not with fear, but with focus. Her heart was racing. Of course it was. She was human. But her face didn't show it. "It's okay," she whispered to the elderly couple near her table, soft but firm. "Stay low. Don't look at him." The old woman grabbed Maya's wrist. "Please don't leave us," she begged, trembling voice. "I'm right here," Maya assured her, calm and steady. The robber noticed her calmness almost immediately. "You!" he barked, pointing the gun directly at her. The entire restaurant fell into a deep, suffocating silence. "You think this is a joke?" he shouted, stepping closer. Maya slowly raised her hands in the air. "No," she answered evenly, confident and strong. "No one thinks this is a joke." Her voice didn't shake, it didn't crack. It flowed steady and controlled, like she was calming a storm instead of standing in one. "Then why aren't you screaming?" he demanded furiously. "Because I've been through worse," she thought. But she didn't say that. Instead, she looked at him carefully. "You don't want to hurt anyone," she said, steady voice. A man hiding under a table whispered, "Maya, stop." The robber's hand tightened around the gun. "Don't tell me what I want," he yelled, rage. Maya didn't step back. "I'm not," she replied gently, calm reply. His breathing grew heavier. For a brief second, the mask couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. Upstairs, behind a large glass wall that overlooked the entire dining area, billionaire owner Ethan Cole had just stepped out of his private office. He had heard the shot. Now he stood frozen, staring down at the scene unfolding below. His staff, his customers, his restaurant. And in the center of it all, a young waitress facing a gun like it was nothing. Then she spoke again. "You're shaking," Maya observed quietly. Gentle observation. Ethan's body stiffened. That voice, it hit him like lightning. Clear, brave, steady. He gripped the railing, leaning closer to the glass. He hadn't heard a voice like that in over 22 years. Downstairs, the robber moved closer to Maya. "You think you're brave?" he mocked, laughing nervously. "No," she answered softly, honest. "I think you're scared." Gasps echoed around the room. The robber shoved a chair out of his way, sending it sliding across the floor, an angry outburst. "Shut up!" he screamed, voice cracking. Maya's heart pounded harder now, but her face remained calm. She took a slow breath. "You don't have to do this," she said, pleading but controlled. "Whatever pushed you here, this won't fix it." A woman near the door began sobbing loudly. "Make her stop talking," someone whispered, desperate. But Maya didn't stop. She knew panic spreads faster than fire. If she lost control, everyone would. "Put the money in the bag," the robber shouted at the cashier. The cashier's hands shook so badly she could barely open the register. Maya took a small step forward. The robber immediately swung the gun back toward her. "Don't move," he warned, threatening. She froze. "I'm not moving," she said calmly. "I'm just standing." Her voice filled the room, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. Ethan felt his chest tighten upstairs. He could hear her even through the glass, and every word sent chills down his spine. Because years ago, on a dark, rainy night, a small girl had spoken with that same strange bravery. A car spinning out of control, metal crushing, sirens screaming, and through it all, a tiny voice saying, "Daddy, it's okay. Don't be scared." Ethan blinked hard, forcing the memory away. Downstairs, the robber grabbed Maya's arm suddenly. Several customers screamed. "Stop talking!" he yelled in her face. Maya winced at the tight grip, but she didn't cry out. Instead, she looked straight into his eyes. "You're not a monster," she told him, compassionately. "Monsters don't hesitate." His hand trembled harder. For a split second, the gun lowered slightly. "You don't know me," he muttered defensively. "You're right," she said gently, soft acceptance. Silence again, heavy. Breathing filled the room. The jazz music had long stopped. Even the street noise outside felt distant. Ethan felt his pulse in his ears. Overwhelmed. He whispered to himself, "Who are you?" Downstairs, Maya slowly turned her head to glance at the terrified customers around her. "It's going to be okay," she told them, reassuring. The old woman who had grabbed her earlier began praying quietly, whispered prayer. The robber swallowed hard. "Shut up, just shut up," he said again, but now his voice lacked power. Maya spoke one more time, softer than before. "Tell me what you need," she said, gentle offer. Upstairs, Ethan's hands started shaking. That was it. That was the exact sentence. 22 years ago, in a hospital hallway filled with smoke and chaos, a little girl had looked up at him and said, "Tell me what you need, Daddy." Innocent courage. Ethan blinked hard, forcing the memory away. Downstairs, the masked robber stood frozen in front of Maya. The gun wasn't controlling the room anymore. Her voice was. Fear had entered the restaurant through the front door, but courage was standing right in the middle of it. And upstairs, a billionaire who had spent half his life grieving felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The robber's fingers tightened around Maya's arm as if he were holding on to the last piece of control he had left. "Stop talking!" he growled, his voice rough and unstable. Maya felt the pressure digging into her skin, but she kept her posture straight. "I'm not trying to fight you," she said slowly. "I'm trying to help you." "Help me?" he snapped. "You think I need help?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Everyone does sometimes." The room stayed silent except for heavy breathing and quiet sobs. Upstairs, Ethan's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. He rushed down the staircase but stopped halfway, hidden in the shadows, listening carefully. That tone, that strength. He gripped the railing tightly. Downstairs, the robber's mask shifted slightly as sweat rolled down his forehead. "You don't know anything about me," he said, defensively. "You're right," Maya answered softly. "So tell me." The robber blinked, confused. Nobody had ever responded to him like that. No screaming, no begging, just calm. "Put the money in the bag!" he suddenly screamed at the cashier again. The cashier dropped a stack of bills. "I'm trying," she cried, trembling. Maya turned slightly toward the cashier. "Take your time," she said gently. "It's okay." "Stop acting like you're in charge," the robber shouted at her, furious. "I'm not in charge," Maya replied, steadily. "I'm just not afraid of you." Gasps filled the room again. The robber pushed her back slightly. "You should be," he yelled, voice breaking. Maya stumbled but regained her balance. "I've been afraid before," she admitted quietly, "and it didn't save me." The robber paused. "What does that even mean?" he demanded, confused and irritated. Maya's eyes softened. "It means fear doesn't solve anything," she said, wise and calm. Upstairs, Ethan closed his eyes for a second. He remembered another moment, a small hospital bed, a child covered in bandages, machines beeping, and that same calm voice saying, "Daddy, I'm not scared." His chest tightened. Back in the restaurant, the robber's breathing became uneven. "Shut up, just shut up," he muttered again, but the anger was fading. Maya slowly lowered one of her hands. "I won't fight you," she said gently, "but I won't let you destroy your life either." "My life?" he laughed bitterly. "My life is already destroyed." A man hiding under a table flinched at the sudden outburst. "Then why make it worse?" Maya asked quietly. The robber's shoulders dropped slightly. "Because I don't have a choice," he whispered, hopeless. "Yes, you do," she replied immediately. He shook his head violently. "No, I don't," he shouted. "My mom needs surgery. We don't have insurance. We don't have money. I've tried everything." Tears began forming in his eyes despite the mask. The room went completely silent. Maya's expression changed. Not fear, not anger, compassion. "I'm sorry," she said softly. The robber blinked rapidly. "You're sorry?" he asked, shaken. "Yes," she answered. "I can tell that sounds painful." He swallowed hard. "I can't lose her," he muttered. Those words echoed through the restaurant. "She's all I have." Upstairs, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He had said those same words once, about his daughter, before she was gone. Maya slowly reached into her apron pocket with her free hand. The robber tensed immediately. "Don't try anything," he warned threateningly. "I'm not," she said calmly. She pulled out a small wad of cash, her tips from the night, crinkled bills, maybe $80. She held it out toward him. "Take this," she said. The robber stared at the money confused. "What is this?" he asked. "It's not much," she admitted, honestly, "but it's a start." "You think this fixes surgery?" he asked bitterly. "No," she replied steadily, "but it fixes tonight." He looked at her like she was crazy. "Why would you help me?" he asked slowly. Maya hesitated for just a second. Then she answered. "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing," she said softly. Upstairs, Ethan's knees nearly buckled. That sentence, that exact sentence. He gripped the railing tightly. Years ago, when their car had broken down in the rain and he had been frustrated and angry, a stranger had stopped to help them. His little girl had looked at that stranger and later said, "Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to help people too, because someone once helped us when we had nothing." Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. Downstairs, the robber's hand loosened from Maya's arm. He looked at the money in her hand again. "You don't even know me," he whispered. "I don't need to," she answered gently, compassionately. "I know you love your mom." His breathing became shaky. The gun lowered slightly. The customers watched in disbelief. "You think I'm a good person?" he asked quietly. Maya nodded slowly. "I think you're a scared son," she said, gentle truth. Tears slipped down from under his mask. For the first time since he entered the restaurant, his hand holding the gun was no longer steady. Upstairs, Ethan whispered to himself, "It can't be." But his heart already knew. The courage, the empathy, the calm in chaos. It wasn't normal. It was familiar. And as Maya stood there, facing danger with compassion instead of fear, Ethan felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope mixed with fear. Because if he was right, if that voice truly belonged to the child he lost, then this wasn't just a robbery. This was fate knocking at the door of his broken past. And downstairs,
In the middle of fear and flashing red alarm lights, something extraordinary was happening. A gun was losing power, and a calm voice was taking control.
Ethan stepped fully onto the restaurant floor, his polished shoes echoing against the tiles. "Let her go," he said, his voice controlled but shaking underneath. The robber spun around, lifting the gun toward him. "Stay back," he shouted, angrily. But Ethan didn't look at the weapon. He looked at Maya, at her eyes, at the way she stood, scared but unbroken. His chest felt tight, almost painful. "What's your name?" he asked her, his voice softer now. Maya blinked, confused by the sudden question in the middle of chaos. "Maya," she replied carefully. "Your full name," he pressed, taking a small step closer. "Maya Johnson," she answered, steadily. The name hit him, but not hard enough. Johnson, not Cole. Still, something inside him refused to let go. "Do you know your birth parents?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. Maya stiffened. The question felt personal, too personal for this moment. "No," she said quietly, guarded. "I was adopted." The robber's hand trembled more violently now. "Stop talking," he snapped, but there was no power left in his voice. Ethan ignored him. "How old were you?" he asked Maya, stepping even closer despite the gun. I was 5, she said slowly, uncertain. "There was a hospital fire. My records were lost." The words slammed into Ethan's heart like a hammer. A hospital fire? 5 years old? Lost records? His breathing became uneven. "What was your name before?" he whispered, barely audible. Maya frowned, searching her memory. "My adoptive parents told me I used to cry at night," she said softly. "I would say a name, but I was too young to remember clearly." "What name?" asked Ethan desperately. She swallowed. I think it was Amara," she said slowly, uncertain but honest. The gun fell from the robber's hand and hit the floor with a loud metallic clang. Customers gasped loudly. Ethan staggered back one step as if the air had been knocked out of him. "Amara," he repeated, tears filling his eyes instantly. Maya stared at him, the way he said the name, not like a stranger, like someone who had whispered it 1,000 times before. You're, she began, her voice trembling. "I'm your father," Ethan said, the words breaking apart as they left his mouth. Silence swallowed the entire restaurant. Even the robber stood frozen, forgotten in the background. Maya shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered, disbelief. "That's not possible." Ethan reached into his wallet with trembling fingers. He pulled out a worn, faded photograph. The edges were bent from years of being unfolded and folded again. He held it out toward her. A little girl with bright eyes and tiny braids stood next to a younger Ethan, both smiling at the camera. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. That's me," she breathed. Her legs weakened beneath her. Ethan rushed forward instinctively and caught her before she hit the ground. Up close he could see it clearly now, the same eyes, the same small scar above her eyebrow from when she fell off her bike at 4 years old. He touched his own forehead unconsciously. "I searched for you," he said through tears. "For years. They told me you didn't survive." Maya's breathing became shaky. "I grew up thinking I was unwanted," she whispered, pain. Ethan's face crumpled. "Never," he said firmly, intense emotion. "You were my whole world." Tears streamed down both their faces. Behind them, sirens wailed outside. Police officers burst through the doors cautiously. The robber didn't resist. He slowly dropped to his knees, hands raised. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he muttered, regretfully. Officers handcuffed him carefully and lifted him to his feet. Before they led him away, Maya stepped forward slightly. "Wait," she said softly. The officers paused.
She looked at the young man, no longer a threat, just a scared son. "I hope your mom gets the surgery," she told him, compassionately. He looked at her, eyes red and swollen. "Why are you still being kind?" he asked quietly. "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing," she replied again, softly. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. The robber nodded slowly before being escorted out. The restaurant slowly began to breathe again. Customers stood up carefully. Some hugged each other, emotional relief. Others wiped tears from their eyes. But in the center of it all stood a father and daughter staring at each other like strangers and family at the same time. "I don't know what to say," Maya admitted. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan replied, gently. She studied his face. "I used to dream about someone coming for me," she said softly, vulnerable. "I didn't know who, I just felt like someone was missing." Ethan swallowed hard. "I never stopped looking," he said, emotional. "Every birthday, every holiday." Maya let out a shaky breath. "All those years," she whispered, sadly. "All those years," he echoed. They stood there in silence for a long moment. Then Maya did something small but powerful. She stepped forward and hugged him. Not dramatic, not rushed, just real. Ethan wrapped his arms around her tightly, embracing with relief. For the first time in 22 years, the emptiness in his chest began to fade. The flashing police lights reflected through the windows. Broken glass still covered the floor. Tables were unturned. But in that messy, chaotic restaurant, something beautiful had happened. A robbery had turned into a reunion. A gun had brought back a lost voice. Later that night, after the police reports were finished and the customers had gone home, the restaurant was quiet again. Maya and Ethan sat across from each other in a booth. "I've been a waitress here for 3 years," she said with a small, tired smile. "And I had no idea," Ethan said, in amazement. "I built this place hoping to create something meaningful," he said, reflectively. "I didn't know it would bring me back my daughter." Maya looked down at her hands. "I wasn't brave tonight," she said quietly. "Courage isn't loud, it doesn't scream. Sometimes it just speaks softly when everyone else is panicking." Maya smiled faintly through her tears. "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" she asked, thoughtfully. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. "I think," he said slowly, "sometimes pain brings us exactly where we need to be." Outside, the city lights shimmered peacefully. Inside, a broken story had found its missing chapter, and the lesson lingered quietly in the air. Fear can walk into a room with a weapon, but courage can stand up with nothing but a calm voice, and sometimes that voice can bring a family back together.